Everyone, it's Lori. Welcome back to Editing with Lightroom Classic. And in this video, we are going to continue working on masking. So this is video 4 in this series, and this one we've already done a sky adjustment. So this mask that we added in video 3 was enhancing the sky. So we're going to continue to work on this image now. So the next thing that I want to do with this image is I want to walk through these next options for using these various tools to create your mask. So remember, these are the ways that we're going to mask our image. So let's start with objects. So we're going to come over and you have two options. You have the brush where we could brush on, or my favorite is to use the marquee square tool. So I'm going to come over and I am just going to select around this tree. And we're going to see how the AI technology does. And it did fantastic. Look at that beautiful mask that it created for us. Now for this, what I'm wanting to do is just open up the shadows, maybe just a little bit on that tree, give it a little texture, a little clarity, and maybe darken the blacks. It was kind of silhouetted. Open up the exposure, maybe just a tiny bit, and maybe add some warmth. Yeah, just to kind of give it just a little glow. Now, if you see some spots like right in here, kind of not liking that, we can just, again, we've got our object here and I can rename that tree. So just double click on it. And so now we've got that mask and I can actually subtract. So I'm going to use the brush tool. You've seen me do this in other videos. I'm going to keep my feather high, flow low, density low. Let's get that brush smaller. I'm going to zoom in over here and I'm going to just come in. Might be hard to see right here. Just going to remove a little bit of that mask that I just did from that area. It's very, very subtle. And it's just going to make it not as evident once we pull out. Okay, so now I've got the subtract area that I did right here. And it's very, very soft again and subtle. I can also increase the flow a little bit because I do want you guys at home to be able to see this. So if you make a mistake on a mask, you can click on it and delete. So we've still got our tree. Let's go back to subtract. I'm going to grab the brush. And what I want to do is let's make this a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to, let's do show overlay. That may help. Yeah. We're just coming in and removing a little bit of that in that area. Let's increase the flow and do a little bit more. So I'm just softening the mask. That's all I'm doing. Just in that area where I thought it looked a little bit bright. All right. So now that we have done our object, now I want to go and we are going to create, so let's rename this. Mask 1 was our sky. Mask 2 was our tree. And now I want to use a linear gradient to really pop the sunflowers a little bit. And the corn is already pretty bright because the sun was over here. But I want to open up this side of the image. So let's go ahead and move our mask tool around. And what we're going to do now is create new mask, and we are going to do a linear gradient. This is one of my favorite masks. It's been around for a long time. And this is where I like to use it dragging from the corners. But I want to show you, you can start over and you drag over. Now the beauty of a linear gradient, you can also go diagonal. You can go in all directions. What it does is it starts heavy and then it fades. And you can adjust the line where it starts to fade. So I'm going to come down right below the sunflowers. Now, what I want to do with this is I'm going to open up the shadows and maybe add just, a little bit of exposure. I'm going to add some more of that temperature warmth. Maybe a little saturation to really make those sunflowers pop. Pull back that exposure just a little bit. And what a difference. So I'm going to label this mask sunflowers. So I know that I've got that and I could make any adjustments if I needed to. So once I'm done with that, I'm going to click the Enter key. And now let's turn it on and off so that we can see the difference. Look at the difference in those trees. Look at the difference even on our sunflowers. So really nice job. Now I have a vision where maybe darkening this road a little bit. So that one is going to be a little challenging. There's a couple ways we could tackle it. We could use our brush tool. So we could come in and just brush this area. We could try objects. We could also try a linear gradient. So let's do a linear gradient. And what I'm going to do is come in this middle area, and I'm going to just do this side. But then what I want to do, have it kind of fade. I can then go and do a subtract. So we could subtract, we could do another linear gradient, and we can drag it over. Let's see, we need it to go this way to subtract from that other area. So now we've got a linear gradient that's going right down kind of the middle of this road. We have two of them. And we can straighten that thing up, getting the curve here. And so we've got the middle section. So that would be one way to tackle a middle kind of scene like this. So now that we've got our two gradients under our main mask, we can see the middle line here. Now I can go in and make adjustments. Now, the only challenge with this is I have the sky is also masked, and we don't want to darken that. Look what happens if I darken that middle. That's not working with my sky. So I don't think linear gradient was the best choice for this option in the center. So I am going to just delete this mask. So let's go to our mask tools and think about what else we could use. Well, we could try actually a radial gradient. So a radial gradient is going to make a circle for you. And it's going to give you a nice fade. And you can make it as long or as wide and kind of fat. And it is going to fade out as it goes. So let's try this one and see how we like that effect. And I think that is pretty nice. It's just giving us a darkening as it leads us out. So here is the before, and here's the after. So just darkening that. So that is using that radial gradient. I will show you the radial gradient on another image in just a second. So we could label this is our road where we've made these updates. So we've covered objects. Of course, brush we've covered in several videos, linear gradient and radial gradient. Let me show you another example of where these work really nicely using both a linear or a radial gradient. So let's go over to a flower image. And for this image, I'm going to delete this mask. And okay, so we have a couple options with this image to edit. We could do select subject, and let's try that. And it did a pretty good job. That would be if I just wanted to impact the rows. But what I want to do is just kind of darken around the image, almost like a vignette. So an easy way to do that would be to grab a radial gradient. We can come over and make our circle. And then what we want to do is actually invert. So there's a button here that we haven't covered, and it's called invert. So I'm going to click that, and it's going to give us this darker area around our image. Now we can come in and make that darker, leaving the center of our image nice and soft. Now with this, you've got these sliders where you can increase or decrease the size of where that mask is located. So here's the overlay. We are impacting outside of this area. We're leaving the center of this rose all alone. And just remember that you can make this bigger, you can make it smaller, and it's a gradient, so it's going to slowly fade. So that's another way. Radial gradient has been one of the original mask tools, and it's still available. Now with all the AI technology, you may find you don't use it as much, but it is important to know how it works, so I would encourage you to give it a try. All right, let's look at another image to do I want to do one more for a linear. And let's think about this image. And with this image, we are going to go in. And if you remember, there is an option to delete all mask. So I'm going to get rid of all of those. I'm going to enlarge this image. Now, this would be a great example of where I could make something look a little more dramatic using these linear gradients. So I'm going to click linear gradient and move my mask tool over, and I'm going to come down from this corner. And I'm just going to darken the exposure, maybe add a little more of that sunset look, maybe a little more blue temperature or warmth. And again, I'm going to darken that corner a little bit more to emphasize this beautiful sun hitting the boat. Now I can come and add another linear gradient, and I'm going to go from this side of the image over right to where that sun starts falling off. And now I'm going to increase the temperature to really make it nice and warm. Maybe a little bit of the hue, saturate it, and maybe brighten it just a little, maybe add a little magenta tones, just to give it a little bit more of a pop. All right, so I'm going to close out of the mask. Actually, let's go back and I'll show you the before. So look at the right side of the image, before and after. It's very subtle, but it's giving us those selective adjustments that really set your image apart. And if you look at the left side, you can see the blue. And now you can see a moodier, kind of more dramatic scene where our emphasis is definitely more on this side of the boat. So linear gradients are really helpful and can help you make those selective adjustments to your image. Okay, so in our next video, I'm going to cover color and luminance range with you. And then our final video is going to be just some overall watchouts and tips that I have learned in using these mask tools. Thanks, everybody.